You don't notice it immediately. At first, you think they're just busy, so you try harder. You text first more often. You become more understanding, more patient, more available. You keep telling yourself, relationships go through phases. But slowly, something starts changing. The conversations feel colder. The energy feels different. And deep down, you begin to realize something painful. You're the only one still trying. And the scary part? Once effort becomes one-sided, the relationship rarely stays the same after that. One-sided effort is one of the quietest relationship killers. No dramatic breakup, no huge betrayal, just one person slowly carrying the emotional weight of two people. And if you've ever been there, you know how exhausting it feels. Because loving someone alone can slowly drain your confidence, your peace, and even your sense of self. Most one-sided relationships don't begin that way. In the beginning, both people try. The calls are consistent, the energy is mutual, the attention feels natural. But over time, one person slowly stops investing emotionally. And instead of addressing it, the other person compensates. They start overgiving. They become the one always checking in, always apologizing, always fixing problems, always making excuses for bad behavior. And because love can make people hopeful, they convince themselves things will improve. But sometimes, the more one person overfunctions in a relationship, the less effort the other person gives. There's a specific kind of pain that comes from feeling emotionally alone in a relationship. It's waking up and wondering, why am I the only one trying to keep this together? It's constantly thinking about someone who barely thinks about you anymore. And eventually, you stop feeling loved naturally. You start chasing reassurance instead. You overanalyze messages. You notice delayed replies. You notice the dry conversations. You notice the lack of effort. And suddenly, peace disappears. Because deep down, your heart already senses the imbalance before your mind accepts it. When effort becomes one-sided, three things usually happen next. First, resentment begins to grow. The person giving everything slowly becomes emotionally tired. They start feeling unappreciated, unseen, taken for granted. Second, anxiety increases because inconsistent love creates emotional confusion. One day the person seems caring, the next day they feel distant, and that inconsistency keeps the other person emotionally trapped. Third, self-worth begins to suffer. Because rejection repeated over time can quietly make someone question their value. They begin wondering, am I asking for too much? Am I not enough? Why do I feel so hard to love? But the truth is, healthy love should not constantly make you feel unwanted. So why do people stay in one-sided relationships for so long? Because memories are powerful. People hold on to who someone used to be. They replay old moments, old conversations, old versions of the relationship, and they hope those feelings will come back again. Sometimes people also stay because they fear starting over. They fear loneliness. They fear losing the emotional investment they already made. So instead of accepting the painful truth, they continue fighting alone, hoping effort can force connection. But relationships cannot survive long-term on one person's energy alone. Eventually, something shifts. The person who kept trying begins to emotionally detach, not because they stopped caring immediately, but because exhaustion finally replaced hope. They realize love should not feel like begging for attention. They realize they deserve reciprocity, consistency, emotional presence. And this is usually the moment the other person finally notices the distance. Because people often ignore effort until it disappears. If you constantly feel like you're carrying the relationship alone, pay attention to that feeling. Because mutual effort is not too much to ask for. Real love is not perfect, but it should feel reciprocal. You should not always be the one chasing conversations, fixing problems, or begging for emotional connection. And sometimes, the hardest truth to accept is this. Not every relationship fails because there's no love left. Some relationships fail because eventually, one person gets tired of being the only one trying. And once that emotional exhaustion reaches its limit, everything changes.